Hello, everyone. For the people that's watching it live, as well as people that are watching recording, if you are applying to boarding school this year, this will be the last month before the deadline. So I think for us here in Sesame, we are also working a lot with a lot of students that are very busy doing the final stretch of the work. This is the kind of advice that we give them at this time of the year, and hopefully this will be helpful to you as well. And just a little quick introduction. My name is Ray, and I studied in America for high school and university in California. And ever since after I graduated, I've been working in admission consulting, specifically boarding school application, admission consulting. So that's 16 years, right? We started sex. I was working in another practice, and then we started Sesameed in 2023. We are based in Singapore, but we do definitely work with clients in Southeast Asia, Greater China, as well as even Africa, India, America, Europe. No matter where you're watching this from, welcome. And we do work with students and families in different time zones. Okay, in the last month, a quick overview. What is something that we should pay attention to? So first, you need to know what needs to be submitted on time. What is something that can wait and like have a looser deadline, right? And some commonly missed items, what you think about test scores and interviews at this moment, right? And lastly, how to manage stress, because that is a very important piece. Um, so your priorities, if you have to find something to focus on, right? Is the timestamp items, basically like for example, your student essays. Right. And I'll go into a little bit more detail after this. And you want to be organized, and kind of preempt things. You don't want to react when the school send you a reminder and then you realize you're missing something, right? I'll be sharing some of the strategy, how to be proactive and managing your application status. And you want to communicate with the school strategically, not to trouble them unnecessarily, but still remain active. Okay. So what must be submitted online? Obviously, the student essays. Hopefully, you're working on that. I think some students have been kind of procrastinating and waiting for the last minute. So, for example, this week and also next week will be the time when a lot of our students go on Christmas break. If you are in a country that have Christmas break. Otherwise, some of our local school students also have breaks here at the end of the year in Singapore. This is a time actually they can focus fully on their student essays. And so this is something that you want to make sure you submit before the deadline. Because if you submit late, a lot of times the school will be quite strict about this. And if you do submit late, even 1 day late, right, they will consider you as a late applicant because they consider this is something that is well within your control. They will have less flexibility and less grace regarding this. Parent statement same. Part one, same, right? School supplement. What we say school supplement is like the supplemental essays. Sometimes if you apply to SAO, uh, there are common applications, but also if you click into each school, you have a supplemental essay. So make sure you submit those as well because they are also a required part of the essay. And videos also increasingly in the recent years, some schools also require you, some are optional, but some are require you to submit a video on top of your written statement. That is something that you need to pay attention to because sometimes it's not as obvious because it's not part of the common app, so often get missed. All right. What is something that the school will be more flexible about? Teacher recommendation, definitely you want to put in. I think most schools, international schools, will tell you that the teacher need anywhere between 10 days to 2, 3 weeks to work on the recommendations. And especially near final time or holiday season, they are more busy. So definitely you want to submit the request to them way before your deadline. But boarding schools also understand, right? The schools that you're applying to, they also understand that this is not something within your control. So, for example, we have a student whose teacher has gone on a medical leave and is not coming back until a month later. So, a situation like this, as long as if you can manage, or with your teacher's help, you can manage to get everything before the end of January, I guess, end of January, because February is really the time they are already like making decisions and reading your file. So try to get all things even late, but don't be too late. Just 2 weeks, within 2 weeks late, end of February. That will be helpful as well. Test scores, I'll say most schools also accept test scores slightly late. Most of the time, if you take the test before the deadline and the score come out, let's say 1 or 2 weeks after the deadline, most of the time they're willing to accept it. And last one, this one is very common because the deadline is Jan 15, but a lot of time the school don't receive their midterm or mid-year grade until the end of January or even some schools early February. So I'll say that is something that the school are very used to receiving late. But that said, so today I just got a message from one of my students, and his school has pushed back the schedule to give the teachers more time to work on the grades. So as a result, the school just announced this year they're not getting the grades until end of February. Now then that's too late, right? Because end of February, by that time the school has made most of the admission decisions already, right? We call it like putting the decisions into the envelopes already. In the old days when we still have envelopes. Of course, nowadays most schools don't do physical letters, but yeah, it's important to get your grades in. But in the case of my student just now, the case that we discussed, for that case, then he will need to do two things. One is he need to try to see if there's any midterm report. So not mid-year, but like 1 quarter, right? So quarter of the year report, or sometimes if the school go by semester, middle of the semester report, that preliminary report that he can submit. If there's no preliminary reports at all, then he will need to write a email to the school to explain, right? This year my school grade is coming in very late and not in time to be considered for my application. Will you please mark my application as complete and make a decision based on my existing grades, right? So most of the time, the schools are quite understanding, are able to do that. Okay. And also, there are things that you need to update the schools about. You will realize, right, in when you submit the application, sometimes maybe especially in gateway at the gateway to prep schools at the end of your student essay, some schools they give you a box to update. Is there anything new happening right after you submitted the part one? The reason why they have this box is a lot sometimes some students they submitted part one quite early. So maybe at the beginning of the school year. So let's say in September, they submitted the part one, right? And then by the time January, that where they have to submit the entire application, there will be some new updates in their activity list or their achievements. So for example, one of my students in the winter term has become a basketball team captain, right? Another student was running for a house captain and won the position and have been doing some leadership work in the school. You have passed, I don't know, new certificate, pass clarinet grade 3 or a math competition. So basically anything new happened after that, you can update in that box at the end of your student essay. For some schools, they don't have that box for you. Then you can feel free to email the update to your interviewer or to the admission office if you don't have an interviewer yet. Okay. Another thing is a very commonly asked question, because if you're lucky if you just take the test, the SSA or TOEFL. If you just take it one time and get a perfect score and submit it, then yeah, good for you, right? But a lot of students they need to take the test multiple times, and when that happened, they need to think about whether to submit the score, and if so, which score to submit, right? So increasingly, the schools are test optional. Um, but Test optional doesn't mean it depends on whether the score will work for you or work against you. Um, Let me give you some general guidelines. So each school, not each school, but some schools will announce and tell you what is the average score that they admit student with, right? Or if they don't, and if you have a consultant, you can ask your consultant. If not, you feel free to send me a private message and ask me. So basically, each school has a benchmark. So if you're above the benchmark, for some school it's 95%, for some school it's 90%, for some school it's 85%, right? So if you're above the benchmark, even if a test optional school, yes, you should submit your score, right? Of course, there's some test blind schools in California, not that many of them, but in the East Coast, mostly just required test or test optional. So in the test optional schools, you you should submit your score if your score is impressive. You should not submit your score if your score gonna bring down your chances, right? So, for example, very obviously, if you are applying to the competitive schools and your score is under 50 percentile, right, that is probably not a good idea to submit that score. And but hey, who knows? Hopefully, if you're taking a December test, right, or you are taking the January test and the score come out later and you have better score, then yeah, you should submit. One thing that some of the families don't notice is they thought when they apply to a school, right, they submit the application, the Common App SAO, and they thought the score will be automatically forwarded to the schools. That's not the case. You have to go in under your active scores and then submit the score. You first have to choose the score you want to submit if you have multiple scores. And then within that score you want to submit, then you have to click submit to each school that you apply to. Okay. So that is actually one thing that quite a lot of families, if they are not experienced and don't pay attention to the details, they would miss that part. So just a friendly reminder, especially if you're not using a consultant. um go through that already. So just go through again, we mentioned this quite a bit, the commonly missed items. So short videos, that's one. For example, Endo will need you to do a 1 minute video. Graded essay is another one. Graded essay is actually quite important. Because in the old days, I still remember some school during the interview, they will ask you to sit down and do a writing sample live, right? But I think they have increasingly rely more on your school essays because they realize that you have more time and do a better quality one. So your school essay with teacher comments, be it from an English class, history class, social science class, that is an important one that you need to get. And especially if you don't have a good essay with comments yet. Sometimes what our students do, they will work on an essay in advance, right? Maybe before the deadline and talk to the teachers and let them know that, hey, I do need your comments before a certain day so that I can submit for my application, right? You know, some teachers are more flexible and willing to work with you to give you comments or marks earlier. School specific supplements we talk about, score sending we talk about, and student photo, right? So some schools ask you to submit the photo in the gateway, but some schools don't ask you to do that. And then after you submit the part one, you will get logged into the portals, right? The school portal, and you set up individual log into the individual portals, and in the portals you will realize they ask you to submit your photo. So again, the requirements are stated differently in different places because you will get one set of instruction in the school's website admission page. Make sure you check all the boxes there, right? You'll get a set of instruction which might or might not be the same or different, right? In Gateway and SAO, follow that. And then lastly, when you log into the school portal or when you get a reminder email from the school, that list might also look slightly different. So I know it's a little bit confusing, but make sure you cross-check everything. Make sure you didn't miss. And the student photo is sometimes the parents also ask, right, what is a good student photo? Basically, it's similar to a yearbook style, as in it's not something like with your entire family. It's not something that you're doing sports. I think mostly to show your face because interviewers interview so many people, they don't remember right? So if you can put a photo showing your face, hopefully looking very enthusiastic and friendly, right? Then they look at that photo and remember, this is the student that I interview and can match that with their note. All right. So graded essay we talked about already. Portals we also talked about already. Um, I do want to mention a little bit more about the portal, right? You want to make sure that you set it up early because you need to do the subsequent steps, right? So for example, some schools require you to schedule the interview in the portal, and some schools will require you to do different. For example, the end of a video, right, is done in the portal. So there are different things that you need to do in the portal. So you want to set it up early. And sometimes if you're not able to log in with the initial password or the links are not working, you want to allow for some time for you to contact the admission office and for them to get back to you, some technical support and all that, right? So you don't want to leave that to a last minute. And delays are quite common, as in if something is done electronically, automatically, then usually the systems will be synchronized within 24 hours, right? But some things are done still by hand. So for example, if you have email a document to a school, then the school a real person will need to download the attachment in the email and upload it in the system and find the right person to upload it to, right? And then tick the box and all that. So there will be some delay, so don't panic if you have submitted something and then it doesn't show up in the system. Uh, Generally, things will show up within 48 hours. If not, if this busy time of the year, maybe give it 3 to 5 days. If still not, then you can go ahead and contact the school. But don't worry if you submit it and it doesn't show up the next minute because a lot of these things are quite manual. Okay. So we as late as this week, right? I have a student that are just starting their entire process this week. So that's very, very tight. But is it doable? Yes, it's doable. But like some schools, so for example, Milton and Deerfield, right? Two very popular schools, they have closed their interview schedule already. So unless for some exceptional cases, otherwise it will not be possible to schedule an interview. Um, a lot of other schools are getting ready to close their interview schedule as well. So I'll say people that are starting to apply now are cutting it very, very close, but still possible if that's something that you really want to do. And some schools, if they are not able to offer you a online or in-person interview, they will recommend you to submit a video. Uh, so basically, you make a video of yourself answering some questions or freestyle and submit it to the school, and they will take this as your interview, and you will still be able to complete your application this way and get an admission decision. Now, would you be admitted? I'll say probably the chances are lower, right? Because the whole impression is you are late, you are not well planned, and also a one-way video doesn't make as much a deep impression as a live conversation with a real person would be, right? But with that said, in my past 16 years, there are some cases where the students are exceptionally strong in other areas and they still are admitted with just a video submission without a real person interview. So it could have. So it's just that far in between. Okay. And even if you're starting now and getting late, right? Especially some of the things you cannot control, like the teacher rag or the SSAT score and all that. So even if you are doing this late, even if you have to miss the deadline, it's still okay. It's still wise to complete the application and the process as soon as possible, because once March 10 hit, the school will announce their decisions. Some students might be very fortunate to get multiple offers. In that case, maybe for some of them, it will be a very obvious choice. Then maybe they will turn down the schools that they are not going. So So some family they will make this decision very fast. Like if they receive a decision on March 10th, they can make that decision on March 11, March 12, right? And the space will free up already. And when the space available, you want to be there. You want your file to be completed already, so that if the school need to move to the next candidate to enroll, you could be the next one. So some people might think, hey, I'm late and I want to wait for the next year, right? Don't do that. If this year is the best timing for you to submit and apply, then maybe it's still okay to submit. It's just that maybe you will not be considered for the first round, but you can be considered for the immediate next round. All right. So we've been talking for a little bit, so time to take a break and introduce our company. So Sesame Education, I'm one of the founders. I have been working in admission consulting, education consulting, like we said, in the past 16 years. So we are based in Singapore. We are very focused. We don't do that many things. We focus on boarding school admission consulting, and we focus on university admission, undergrad. That's all. We don't do grad school. We don't do law school. And we do some day school. What? So predominantly boarding school, predominantly in the US. That's why this whole conversation today is about US boarding schools whose deadline is January 15. We do have students, some of them apply to Canadian boarding schools, apply to UK boarding schools. Those their timelines are a little different. So and their process and requirements are a little different. So if you're interested in that, feel free to just drop us a line and we can discuss. But today's discussion mainly just for US boarding schools. Okay, so back to our topic. How a mission will read an application. I'm just gonna go in this a little bit. This is a topic of our next seminar, but I just want to do a little preview, and it's kind of related to this whole deadline thing because once after the deadline, the first 2 weeks, right, will be the time they compile the files, make sure everything is completed, collected, put in the same place. And then by late Jan or early February, the first 2 days of February, they spend reading the files and making initial decisions, having discussions, first round cut, second round cut, right? So by like we said just now, by the end of February, majority of the decisions are made. So if you worry about one piece of the application, right, let's say the score, or you worry about your grade, just remind yourself this is a holistic process. Of course, we want everything to be perfect, but no one is perfect. So they for sure will read everything, consider everything when they make a decision on your application. Just like you take the application very seriously, they also take the application very seriously and give you the respect in return. All right. So after you submit the application, right, what else you do? You communicate with the school. So just sit there. I mean, you could, this is optional, right? So you could just sit there and wait for a decision, but maybe you don't want to just sit there and wait for a decision. Be proactive, right? So sometimes you would want to check in with the school admission officers. So first, you don't want to write long, long, long emails like love letters, right? Some people call them. No, don't write love letters. They are busy. They don't have so much time to read if and especially if the content is just how much I love your school. That's not very meaningful to them. Rather, like we talked about just now, if there's updates in your life, right? Up your application that is meaningful, and will make a difference in your application, then send an email, update that, and ask them to help to add that to your application. Now, some like whenever I ask my students after the deadline, I'll say, "Do you have any updates?" They will automatically say, "No, I don't have updates." But when I ask them more, they were like, "Oh, okay, right." So maybe they didn't have a new leadership role, but maybe they have a new project, right? And they learn a new concept. They have done something they have done some new updates in some of the topics that they have discussed previously with the admission officers. So it's okay to write a quick follow-up letter to follow on that discussion that happened before, but you respect the response line because the admission officers are very busy this time of the year. So you want to make sure that you give them time to respond because that's another student of mine told me yesterday, right? She sent an email to an admission officer and he didn't write back within 24 hours. And then she was worried already. And did the email get lost? I said, no, right? Maybe give a little bit more time for people to write back. And actually, it's quite common for people to not write back, right? Because sometimes you just submit something and tell them some new update about yourself. It doesn't require a reply. So sometimes they just take that information and not reply. So it would be nice if they reply, right? But if they don't, still don't panic. Maybe that thing will show up in your admission portal later on. Emotional management. This bit is quite important. The most stressful part of the work supposedly is done by this stage, but now we are kind of waiting there, nothing to do and anxious, right? So I'll say, you have tried your best, just let it be, and now we just carry on our life, and then um, whatever the result, we'll be ready to accept it and embrace it together, right? So and actually give a pat in the back for yourself for having done a great job, having to prove through this and submitting everything by the deadline. That in itself, regardless of the result, is an achievement already. And I always tell the parents, right? Don't be anxious. Don't even if you are, do it like quietly and subtly. Don't let that anxious energy get to your kids, because yeah, that could happen sometimes. And nowadays our young people are already so stressed and getting stressed from social media, from society, from school, from everywhere already. So it's not necessary to add on to that stress. Um, when it comes decision day, you will get an announcement on the portal. Sometimes they will send out portal and email, but some school don't send out email, so you have to log into the portal and click open, right? And then you see a decision. Occasionally, some schools send a physical package, so you get a notification, SMS or email telling you that you got mail, you got a package coming your way. Usually, that's good news. And we always encourage our students to go to revisit day because when you go to the visited campus, it's just a one time and you get one tour guide who might or might not have impressed you. But if you go revisit day, you will spend more than half a day there. You will see many people, sit in classes, try out different parts of the school life. So that might change your decision. So if you're sitting there, nothing to do, you can start to make plans and check out the date of the revisit day so that you can look forward to that travel again. We are good in our seminar, so it's a short one, but just a friendly reminder to stay organized, to communicate wisely, and don't give up too easily. So even this is late, but it's still before the deadline. So best of luck to everybody, and hope you all receive happy news on March 10th. And if you want to be in touch, these are our information. Always happy to have a chat.